Hello everyone, Lawrence Fleming here. Excuse me as I try to get my other glove on. It's cold enough for me to wear gloves, and these gloves are thick enough to keep me warm. I've got thinner ones that work with the phone, but they're thin, so. The temperature's in the low 40s, but it says that it feels like it's in the 30s, so that's what I'm dealing with today. So I'm staying well bundled up. As we do our study. I've been talking about a lot of general things going on. Get my coat zipped up again. Oh, stop that. Sorry, I can't hold on to the selfie stick. I looked at 3 places for a selfie stick. I saw one so cheap that I don't think I could use it ever. So I'm just going to have to keep looking. I probably will have to go into town later. I got to go upload this video at some point. It is so strange walking through here and not seeing leaves and being able to see everything. It's been since last winter that I hiked in areas like this. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of other things to keep us busy while we're waiting on the rapture. Everybody's gone through their prediction lists and had all kinds of dates come and go, and we're still here. So what's going on? Where's the rapture? Thought we'd be out of here by now. Well, I guess to a degree I'm living proof that we can handle a little bit of what's coming. I'm continuing to camp despite the winter coming on. So we can survive a lot more than we think we can. And that's the key. The longer we survive down here on Earth, the more chance to get the message out to the rest of the world. Oh, the rapture's coming. There's no doubt about it. If we look at some of our end-time signs, wars and rumors of wars, those are going on, continuing. We came real close to World War III again with the Poland missile. The banks are right in the middle of testing the new digital currency. They got a 12-week test on that, and they can start bringing in the general public. That will be necessary before we get the Antichrist to do his mandate. We have ESG established, and in some places they're trying to implement it, but they're finding resistance, so they're going to have to do something to get more power. So I'm expecting that to be one of the next things we see as another outreach for power. Yeah, the election is sort of over. The remaining candidates may or may not change anything. It doesn't really matter. At this point in time, the current established government doesn't matter. What matters is our judicial side, and they're going to have to deal with that. And they're going to have to take more power to the harlot, which we're going to see soon when something major happens. We're seeing an increase in earthquakes. And with Dutch Sense up there proving that the earthquakes can be predictable and that there are more than they are reporting, they don't report all of them, and they take them down if they're really big. They don't want us to match up with any end time teaching is about more earthquakes. So they're constantly changing that and they're adjusting the numbers. So earthquakes are on the rise, despite what they want you to know. So we basically are in this, end time things. You will see all these things, but the end is not yet. That's where we're at. We've also got the Revelation 12 sign that we know happened 5 years ago, so that's out there. We're waiting on the rest of it. Revelation 12 has 3 main parts of it. Remember I said a lot of the chapters in Revelation are vignettes. When we see about the seals, all the seals together from 6 until 8 are one vision. And then 8 starts the trumpets as well. When the original chapters were put in place, let me see if I can get this out further. When the original chapters were put in place, they were just trying to make it easier to read. And the one thing that they didn't know how to do was read prophecy. So the prophecy ones are the hardest. Sometimes they cut off too soon, sometimes they go too long. That happens on other books of the Bible as well. And then later on they added the verse numbers just to kind of help us teach it. But same problem, if the chapter's wrong and you put verse numbers on it, those are wrong too. So sometimes things finish and end before they should. It is cold this morning. Although I'm doing this, I think it's coming up on noon. That looks like it splits the sky, so I think it is pretty close to noon. I'm just walking my normal path that I normally walk when I'm here, if I just want to come out and make a quick video. I'm not going to go a long ways in this. It's too cold to be out. But the campus still got people left over from yesterday. They may spend one more night here and then go home. Typically Mondays through Fridays in these parks are empty and I'm by myself. I'm heading for my swing that I like here by the river. There's the river. And where's my swing? I'm looking towards the sun, what there is of it. I just kind of want to, I got an outline of the book of Revelation. I just kind of want to go over that with you. We can teach some of it, but frankly, most of it doesn't apply to us. Not as Christians. We'll be out of here by the time it's ready to start taking toll on mankind. It feels good to sit down. I have trouble on moving days sometimes because my knee and my back bother me a little bit. I'm going to try to put this on the ground. Okay. That's good. Okay, so I've got my list here. Whenever I have to deal with Revelation, I've already gone through and marked it up. The book of Revelation is the only book that has a blessing tied to it. If you read the book, you will get a blessing. Back that way I can rock a little bit. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ given to John. It was written about 90 AD. There's nobody else alive in the original circle Even Paul's gone by this time. And John's in prison, so he's really not in the best of shape as far as what we would look at in humanity and think that he should be doing better. It seems like these guys, whenever they got into trouble and got locked up, they did the most work for God. Think back to Joseph. He gets thrown in the pit. They were going to kill him, and then they threw him in the pit. And then they decided, no, we don't want to kill him and have that on our conscience. They just sold him to slave traders as they went through the area. He did get hired by a rich guy. They're the only ones that can afford slaves, multiples. And he did such a good job, he was put in charge of everything. And if it wasn't for deception, evil deception from the rich guy's wife, he'd have been doing that for a long time. She lies about Joseph making advances towards her, and he's thrown into prison. Well, time goes by, a number of years, and he's, put in charge of the prison. And the guy in charge of the prison has to be a hard guy. He's dealing with prisoners every day. Criminals who steal, murder, whatever. He's dealing with hardened criminals, of which he's got Joseph in his midst. Eventually, he puts Joseph in charge of the prison. And he's been witnessed making predictions, understanding dreams. So when the Pharaoh gets a dream that none of his religious people could identify, someone that was in prison that promised to remind him to the Pharaoh years before forgot about him, and then this thing came up and the Pharaoh was going to kill everybody if you couldn't identify it. He goes, I know somebody who might be able to identify it. Let me go get him. And he gets Joseph out of prison. Of course, Joseph gives him the 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. That pretty much saved the Pharaoh and the country. And only God could reveal something like that. So Pharaoh knew he had somebody important. He put Joseph in charge. All these things came out of darkness. Well, we have a lot of darkness coming up. Some of it we're going to be a part of. Some of the early stuff. The rapture will get us out of the preliminaries. The seals and the trumpets, those are the preliminaries. Those are man's doing. We won't see God's wrath until the bowls, and that'll be after the abomination of desolation. So we pretty much have everything in the Bible defined all the way through the book of Revelation, all the way to the end. We know what's coming. The only thing we don't know is the start. Now, why did John write about it 2,000 years ago? Well, the first part of Revelation applies to the world. One, we get to see in chapter 1 what Jesus is like now. John gets to see Jesus in heaven. That's a pretty cool feat. And then chapters 2 and 3, we find out what Jesus wants from us, from the churches, the 7 letters. They're scorecards. And that applied back then and it applies today. So that's what it was written for, so that the whole world would know what to expect. Basically, chapter 4 through the end in chapter 22 are what's coming. But like I said, remember that the vignettes are overlapping. We know that we get a look at heaven and God and everything up there in 4 and 5, but then when we get to 6, those are the seal judgments. The first one's the Antichrist. How much of him are we going to see? I don't know. We may not see him at all. We may not recognize him because he may be under the cover. We don't see him. But he may get here and react with us a little bit. But we would recognize him. At least the spirit in us would recognize him and call him out. And once he's exposed, he couldn't ever get rid of that. So we're going to have to get out of here before we have a chance to expose him. In our instant social media world, that's a fraction of a second. So if he comes down here, we might see him going up, but we're not going to be down here very long. We look forward into Revelation 12. That's talking about us, Jerusalem, and Satan. And that's again another little vignette, if you will. But Revelation 12 covers the rapture. That's where the word harpazo is used. When the church, us, those that will rule with an iron fist at the end with Jesus, coming back with him at the second coming, we're going to rule over the 1,000 years. That's where we get that information from, as well as other places, but it's well defined there. Satan's going to come after us. He's going to have a third of his angels. This is final. This is the war. He wants to get this over with because he wants to win. But we get pulled away. We get raptured. And I guess that step of coming after us like that so blatantly is enough for God to finally say that's enough. Michael, kick him out of heaven. And he does. And he comes to earth and he's mad. We may be out of here. But the woman's not. Jerusalem's not. But again, we don't have to worry about it. We're going to get raptured. So let me just kind of cover my notes a little bit. Out of Revelation chapter 4 and 5, that's the visiting heaven and seeing Jesus established as the only one worthy to open the seals. Then we go into 6 and we see the seals. And to show you, I've mentioned this before, to show you that Revelation 6 is a complete vignette, beginning to end, covering the tribulation time frame. When you get to chapter 7, which is still part of the seals, you got the 144,000 are sealed. And then at the end of the tribulation, we see in 7:9 the multitudes from the tribulation. They've gone through the tribulation. It says so right there. You can't go through the tribulation and then go back and go through it again, which is what the linear teachers used to teach on Revelation. This is not linear. This isn't Greek. The original Greek writings would have been linear. And basically, you can follow that up through maybe chapter 5. But when 6 starts, that's a vignette. Here's a complete story in itself. Stop, and let's look at the next vignette. And the chapters weren't marked well, because chapter 8, that's the 7th seal, but it also has the first trumpet in chapter 8. Chapter 8:7, in fact, that's the first trumpet. And then you got chapter 9 has the 5th trumpet. Chapter 10 has that little book that tastes good but sours the stomach. I'll cover that when we get to it. And in chapter 11, you got the 2 witnesses. They rule for 1,260 days. They're probably the ones that kill the Antichrist. And then he is resurrected. Remember when we talk about the 7 kings, one's is for a little while, then is dead, and then comes back again? That's the Antichrist. And then you see the 7th trumpet in 11:15. Okay, then Revelation 12 I've already talked about because that covers our rapture. And then you see that they're going back and recovering stuff, starting at the beginning and covering again. The seals cover, the trumpets cover. Now, 12 is a complete vignette. 13 is another vignette. We're talking about the beast of the sea coming out. 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, the 7 heads are the 7 kings of the harlot, and the 10 horns, that's the Antichrist, riding on the back of the harlot. So we've gone back and we're covering this next scenario again, going from beginning to the end of this time frame that most people call tribulation. The only part that's theoretically called the Great Tribulation or the Wrath of God is the second part. The first part really isn't defined. We just lump it all together and call it the tribulation. Okay. Eventually, we get to 14, and then we get the reaping. First, they're reaping the good souls with the angel coming down with his sickle, and then they reap the bad souls. 15 is a prelude to the bowls. 16 are the bowl judgments. There's some tough ones. There's a seal that kills a quarter of mankind. There's a trumpet that kills a third. We won't be here for this, but the world is going to keep getting hit and hit and hit, hoping that they will do this. But somewhere around after the bowls, it says that they still won't give up their sin. All this stuff going on, they still won't give it up because they're full of Satan. If they could just get Christian messages into their brain, but you got to be ready for it. We're not sent somebody to witness to unless they're ready and the Spirit's ready to deal with them. 17 talks about Mystery Babylon. Well, Babylon's already up here with the 7 kings and the beast, remember? So this again, repeat. It's the way the Revelation works. We have the fall of Babylon in 18. The whole world mourns because they were being taken care of. They took everything away from people, and then they come back and hand it back to them piece by piece in their way that they feel fit. If you don't agree, you don't get fed. You don't get to do anything. They don't care if you die. In fact, they want the population reduced. That's Babylon. Now, 19, heaven's rejoicing. So the world's not happy, but heaven's rejoicing over the fall of Babylon. And 20, Satan's bound for 1,000 years. And we get to come down here with Jesus and rule over that 1,000 years. There will be no interference from Satan during that time. The first generation or two are probably going to be in good shape, but they're going to still fall away. They're still sin-natured human beings living on this earth. At the very end, when Satan's released, which will be at the end of the 1,000 years, that's when we have Armageddon. The whole world joins Satan in a final battle, because they still, despite all that we've talked about here and everything that they're going to go through, and I haven't even read the details, despite all that, they still join Satan in a final battle at Megiddo. I shrug my shoulders, take a deep breath and sigh. It's like, how can they be so blind? But that's Satan. He's blind. He's been that way from the beginning. When he tricked Adam and Eve, he's been a deceiver ever since. Now, chapters 21 and 22 are good chapters. Everything's pretty much over by that time. We get a new heaven and a new earth. What's it going to look like? I don't know. We'll get the New Jerusalem, too. That's where we're going to have the big wedding feast. Okay, I don't think we get no, everything about the Galilean wedding is probably very accurate, except for the wedding feast. I don't think we have that until the end. It would be inappropriate for us to be celebrating while they're still suffering down here. And, of course, 22, we got the river of life. In the end, we win in the end. It's just getting there. And the only unknown, he's given us everything. in the book of Revelation except the start. He didn't want us to know the start because he wanted everybody to be planning and doing their best to help everybody. If they knew that there wasn't going to be the rapture or the everything in the book of Revelation for 2,000 years, they probably would have joined in the world and they could have lived out many generations of people just celebrating. There wouldn't have been martyrs for eons. They almost destroyed the church in the 3rd century, 2nd and 3rd. Yet they were still martyred. There wouldn't have been any reason to blame the Christians for burning Rome. That was a lie, of course, but it was an excuse to take the blame off of Nero. There'd have been no Holocaust if they would have known the truth, I think. It would have been, they would have fallen into the world even further. We see in the millennium that even without Satan, man's going to fall. So, be looking at the future with short-term trepidation, long-term joy. We're going to spend an eternity with God in a new heaven and new earth, whatever that is. He's done a very good job creating everything that I'm looking around me, and I've been around, a good part of the world, at least half of it. He's done a good job creating everything, things to keep us interested. Now, if the earth is only 6,000 years old, then he put dinosaurs in the earth for us to dig up to be interested, because we're all inquisitive. If the earth really is billions of years old, then he really had dinosaurs on the earth that, again, we can be inquisitive about. I'm going to start walking back. We know, let me get this closed up. We know he greatly cares about us and wants us to be totally happy here on earth. So our future is going to be that way as Christians. We just have to get by this next, I don't know. I don't want to say a year because I don't think it is that long, but we have to get through these next months maybe. Again, the rapture, as it's always been from Paul's time, imminent. He was looking for it, and we're going to continue to look for it until it gets here. In the meantime, Paul continued out his whole ministry, suffered for it and died. All the apostles continued their ministries. Everything that's going on, it's just a world that needs us right now more than any time, because we don't know when the end is. So get out there, talk to people, and do it with a happy, smiling countenance. Don't go in doom and gloom and you're worried about the end. Nah. If you're die in the body, you'll be with Christ. If you raised in the rapture, you'd be in Christ. Either way, you've got a happy outcome. Share that. Till we meet in the skies. God bless. And take a quick look around the camping area with all the trees bare of leaves, and all you have is the pine trees. Look at how far you can see. The parking lot up there. Comfort station. You can easily find your way to the trails. Here's one of the main trails, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick this up for a little bit. Well-marked trails. Blessings.